Have you ever felt overwhelmed with all that's going on in the world? Sometimes we don't realize that we can make a difference. My name is Debbie Van Grieken, and it is my hope to inspire you to take small steps towards social impact. Join us each week as we have conversations with those who have taken simple steps towards living a more sustainable and socially conscious lifestyle. If you want to make social impact, let's start small. The Small Steps podcast is proudly sponsored by Moya Shea Products. As a listener, enjoy 15% off your online purchase. Use code SMALLSTEPS15 at checkout. At Moya, we believe in people helping people. Supporting the local and global communities that help our organization succeed is very important to us. We apply a fair trade framework when purchasing raw materials, supporting farmers and families. Thinking global and acting local, Moya works with organizations to better the lives of children through education and fair trade. Are you looking for the best moisturizer for beautiful, healthy, glowing skin? Our Shea products are superb moisturizers and have exceptional healing properties for those suffering from skin issues. Check out these products and our wellness line at moyasheabutter.com. Welcome back to the Start Small podcast, Small Steps to Social Impact. I'm your host, Debbie Van Grieken, and I'm also the owner of Moya Shea Products. When I first started my business, I was excited to get my products into store shelves, and my first stop was 10,000 Villages in Port Colborne. I knew the store manager, Jane Nigh, through our shared passion for fair trade, so when Jane made my first store purchase, I was so thrilled. I'm happy to have Jane as a guest today. Jane has been involved in the fair trade movement for many, many years. The store manager of 10,000 Villages for 18 years and now the manager of Villages Port Colborne, Jane brings her dedication to empowering artisans into a new era. Some of the most wonderful experiences of her life has been her visits to Pakistan, India, Nepal, and the West Bank to visit artisans and farmers. I am so inspired by Jane and her passion, and I know you will be too. Welcome, Jane, to Start Small. Hi, Jane. It's so great to be with you today.
Hello, Debbie.
We were just talking off camera there that we've known each other now for at least 8 years.
Yeah.
Maybe even closer to 10, which kind of blew me away for a moment there. I can't believe how time goes by so fast. But we actually met, because of our shared passion for fair trade. And you've been in the movement for a long time, much longer than me. And you're really instrumental in getting the town of Port Colborne designated as a fair trade town. And I think it was actually the first town to receive the designation in Canada, wasn't it?
No, it was the first town in Ontario and the third in Canada.
Third in Canada, still really impressive. Yeah, that's amazing. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what ignited that passion in you and tell us a little bit about your journey, what got you into fair trade.
Well, let me go back to the formation of my youth, a taste for beauty that got me involved, first of all, in 10,000 Villages. I have come from a family that was fairly religious, so the important components were caring for one another, for living simply, and for being stewards of our earth. And so those things have resonated with me and become my own values as I've grown up. But my dad, too, was instrumental because he, in his later years, got interested in a book that was called Small is Beautiful by a German-born British economist by the name of E.F. Schumacher. He says Small is Beautiful is a study of economics as if people mattered. And so it was a revolutionary look at economics and how our world does business. I tried to read that book, but I couldn't get into it.
Oh.
But
that would probably be me too. It sounds so great.
But that Small is Beautiful has really stuck with me. And the idea that it's important that people matter. And then when I was in my teens, my dad took his 4 teenage kids to Europe on a shoestring, Europe and the Middle East, for 8 months in a VW van. During that time, I went through the mountains of Turkey. I went to the markets of Damascus, to Jordan, to the refugee camps where there were Palestinian refugees, and on to Israel, and then back again through many, many different countries. And at the time, I was a kid. I was 15 years old. But that has stayed with me, remembering the beautiful handy needlework of the Palestinian women. And there was a little store there, a little handicraft store that was trying to sell their handicrafts so that they could have money to clothe and feed their children. From there, then, those influences, in the 80s, my dad started buying fair trade coffee from Bridgehead. And he said, Jane, you got to start buying fair trade coffee. And I said, oh, yeah, I should. And then at the same time, I was a student at Western, and I was attending a Mennonite church. And every Christmas, they set up a 10,000 Villages sale in a nearby mall. And I did some volunteering in that sale. So it was just a natural segue when we moved to Port Colborne, and surprise of surprise, there was a port gift and thrift store in town that half of it was devoted to, it was called then, it's gone out of my head, but it was the forerunner of 10,000 Villages. And I was just so excited. I thought, the small town of Port Colborne has 10,000 Villages product here? So when my third little girl went off to kindergarten, I started volunteering. And about 5 or 6 years later, it became obvious to me that the two stores, the thrift and the gift, did not do very well together. So I initiated a split, and we became 10,000 Villages independent, completely independent of the thrift store. And we started in a little tiny under 200 square feet beside the thrift store. Yeah. And our sales just really did very well. So I got highly involved in this. Then also interleaved with that was, first I read an article in Harrowsmith about Wolfville, Nova Scotia becoming a fair trade town, the first one in Canada. And I thought, Port Colborne could do that. You know, we have a 10,000 Villages store that's been here a long time. We had a fair trade cafe. We had another little restaurant that was committed to serving fair trade coffee. I thought, for a population of under 19,000, we must be able to make it work. So that was a factor. And then my husband's work and research took him to Pakistan. And I went with him to Pakistan, to Lahore. I didn't do anything then, but I got into the culture. I learned about the people, some of the people there. And then I realized that 10,000 Villages has artisans in Pakistan. They had the onyx carvers in Karachi, and they had the rug knotters and weavers in Lahore and in Peshawar. And so the next time we had to go for business, I contacted 10,000 Villages and said, I want to go and visit these places. So I visited the carvers in Karachi. I visited the rug makers with my girls. And
that's so amazing to be able to see exactly where it's coming from and actually see that integrity of the supply chain. And
well, so important. Yes, Debbie. And that is what then, it was those kinds of trips. I visited Nepal and work in Nepal with small farmers who needed irrigation systems set up, really simple irrigation systems. We visited artisans in India, and we visited olive wood carvers in West Bank who were suddenly now their villages were closed off completely with huge cement blocks and barbed wire, and they couldn't pass easily in and out. And I remember meeting Itzhak and Angel, who hosted us for a dinner. You know, he was an engineer, but he couldn't get any work. And so he was following in his father's tradition of carving olive wood. And so I came home and I said, you know, I was not really comfortable speaking in public, but I said to myself, I have to do something. So when invitations came to speak in churches or to speak in schools, especially grade 5, 6 classes where they have fair trade as part of their curriculum, I couldn't say no. I had to go and tell the stories of these people that I had met and how a fair trade and putting people before profits is so important. I think that's kind of in a nutshell the process that got me going, and it just grew. And then I would go to schools and set up, a booth and meet people like you, Debbie, with Moya Shea. Yeah, just different artisans
and
groups.
And it's so great because it just shows again what we're all about is these small steps and how they can have such big impact. And you mentioned that the schools are teaching fair trade in their curriculum in grades 5 and 6, and that wasn't happening before, and now it is. And that's so amazing, that just the impact that we're having. I know I have done a lot of school talks as well in grades 7 and 8, talking about social justice as well and fair trade. And it just is so amazing to see the kids just turn on, like they get it and they see, wow, like this is the way it should be. It's amazing when you see that they realize, oh, that's not what's happening, and this is what should be happening, and I can have a part in that. So it's amazing, and I'm so glad that you are doing it. I know both of us are not, really comfortable at public speaking, but we put ourselves out there, and I think that's the important thing. So
just last week or 2 weeks ago, a little boy with his mom came into the store, and he said, "I'm doing a project on fair trade," and he said, I want to buy a fair trade chocolate bar. As part of his presentation. And so he was looking around, and his mom said, "Oh, I didn't even know there was a fair trade store in Port Colborne." And she said, "But my son knew." And then I said to him, "So what have you learned about fair trade?" I kind of put him on the spot.
Right.
And she said, "Well, I learned about the Rana Plaza disaster in Bangladesh." And I said, "Yes, wasn't that terrible, where over 1,000 lives were lost?"
Yeah, the garment workers.
The garment workers factory. And then he said, "And then, I know about farmers and coffee and chocolate." And so, he didn't have a big grasp of fair trade, but he had these little tidbits of information that would stick in his brain and hopefully help him make decisions as he goes along in life.
Amazing. So great. Jane, it's been a tough year. So 2020 began with the announcement that 10,000 Villages, which is one of the oldest fair trade companies, was closing its doors after 74 years. And it was leaving only a handful of independently owned stores like yourselves. So what made you decide to stay open?
First of all, we are an independent, the 10,000 Villages had two kinds of stores. They had a company store and a board run store. So those were two different models completely. And the board run stores were always independent. We had our own finances, our own financial statements. We had to raise money to get started. The only connection we had was to use the name of 10,000 Villages and to buy their product and to follow their standards. So when 10,000 Villages announced they were closing, first of all, I felt very despairing because I thought, how are we going to continue when we don't have the product available? They're no longer bringing in the product. But then I saw that 6 other stores had opted to stay open and to give it a whirl. And 4 of them decided to still continue their liaison with the parent company, Mennonite Central Committee, and at least for another year, carry their name, 10,000 Villages. 3 of us decided to separate completely, mainly so that we could have a website and a web store. Those were some of the limitations MCC put on their stores. So just the fact that I had these other stores that we could communicate with and share information and say, what artisan groups are you purchasing from now? And how can we work together to strengthen ourselves? And that gave me a great deal of encouragement. My board was strongly in favor of continuing. And so we sort of agreed that we would continue for a year and then reassess and see how it's going. I also want to say that, maybe I'm answering your next question.
Yeah. So You mentioned that you've really had to pivot, and I love that. You're doing some new things like going on to the web and having a website and being able to purchase that way. It was really disheartening to hear when 10,000 Villages said that their reason for closing was not being able to be sustainable, and that hits us hard. Especially, young companies like myself, 4 years, and a company 74 years. And to hear that, it's a struggle, but then I get inspired by you who doesn't give up. I know you've had to pivot a lot. Maybe you can talk about some of those pivots that you're making to be sustainable and to continue on this movement.
Well, I'm not sure we've pivoted as much as you think, although we have, in that we had to get a completely new point of sale system and learn that. It was a cloud-based point of sale.
That's a huge pivot.
That is a huge pivot. And then the other huge pivot is setting up a web store. And that has been a lot of work. But Debbie, I don't know about your business, but this business historically has depended heavily on volunteers. And that is what allowed it to be sustainable. And I think, don't quote me, but I think they got away from that model more and more, especially in the city stores where it was hard to find volunteers. And so more and more people had to be paid to manage and be sales associates. So in our store, we have one paid person who works 21 hours a week, is paid for 21 hours a week. The rest of the time, we have a really strong group of committed volunteers. And I couldn't have done the pivots without them. I have ones who are really strong in computer knowledge and really strong in economics and bookkeeping and things like that. So those are one of the things. The other thing is realizing that we wouldn't have the backing of a well-respected organization like 10,000 Villages anymore. I felt it important to align ourselves with some other well-respected group, which is the Fair Trade Federation, that is a North American organization that gives credibility to who we are as a fair trade vendors.
Absolutely.
So that was another thing.
So you were recently accredited by the Fair Trade Federation. Yes, that's wonderful. Yes. Congratulations on that.
Yeah, thanks. And then the other thing is finding new companies. So yeah, I guess we have pivoted a lot, Debbie.
Yeah.
So Level Ground has been a long-standing company. Moya Shea has been a company that we had already been using and involved with. Now we found out Fazal Socks, which is these amazing hand-knit socks coming out of North India. Dandara is a company. They're all associated with the Fair Trade Federation that has products coming out of Egypt. So and then recently, 10,000 Villages USA found a way to make many of their products available to us through FAIR. Are you familiar with FAIR?
Yes.
So I can purchase 10,000 Villages product through FAIR and bring them into our store. So that's been great too.
That's amazing. Yeah. So yeah, I laugh. You definitely, Jane, have done some pivoting this year. I think we tend, and you and I are the same, we tend not to give ourselves much credit. And then we realize when you look back, wow, we really did a lot this year.
Well, that's maybe true. Yes.
And I think it's being very well received. And I think definitely switching to the online is going to be huge for your store, just being able to have such a wider audience and spread the message, which is so amazing. Jane, I want to take it a little personal again and just ask how you've maybe incorporated living fair into your life. Maybe you can tell us, we're all about taking these small steps. I find that people get overwhelmed when they think of all these problems and they think that they can't make a difference. And when I try to tell them that even these little small steps that they take towards living a fair and sustainable life can have a huge impact, and just provide a little bit of hope for them so that they don't feel that they're too overwhelmed to inaction. So if they can just make that step. So just share with us some of those things that you've learned. You've talked about them through this interview that you've taken through your life that has kind of got to you where you are now.
I live on a farm, Debbie, and I like to grow my own food in the summer. So that's one thing. And then when I can't have any food from my garden, then I connect up with a little organization called Shared Harvest in Dunville. And I get their CSA weekly. Supporting local farmers is really important to me. And I get so upset when things are in season in Ontario or in Niagara, and I go into the stores and they're bringing the fruit in from California or from Mexico or wherever, and they're not supporting our peach growers and our strawberry farmers and things like that. So I buy my clothes from fair trade organizations. So something like ARC Imports has some lovely sweaters and dresses that are reasonably priced.
And I got to say, not to interrupt you, but I got to tell our viewers that Jane is a very stylish lady. I envy the clothes that you wear. Every time I see you, you just look so fabulous. And I think it must be that, when you buy ethical, it's just beautiful, right? So.
Yeah. I also shop at the thrift stores too.
Oh, me too. We love that too.
And then occasionally at the One of a Kind in Toronto, where there's small boutique vendors. Again, it's about, supporting small. So that's important. I drink only fair trade coffee, and I drink fair trade tea, and I use fair trade sugar in my baking and at home, and chocolate. That's really important to me. I think we forget so much the injustices that happen in the cocoa industry.
There really is a lot. Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, coffee has got a big name and is well represented in the fair trade world. The others, it's harder.
Yes.
Even the tea is harder. The cocoa is harder. Also, I buy fair trade olive oil from West Bank. That's usually the olive oil of my choice, and it's in my kitchen. I respect small businesses. I try and avoid at all cost all the big box stores. I feel that is really putting out of business the small companies, the people oriented, the stores where we can go and talk to people we know. So yeah, my husband drives an electric car, and so do I. And then the other thing is, we put a little electric motor on our little sailboat, which we sail, but we're trying to get away from gas consumption as much as possible in our lives. So those are things that it is part of who I am. Fair trade is, and I know that in town I'm sort of looked on as the fair trade lady.
Exactly.
And that's okay. That's okay.
That's great. That's a great title to have. Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
I just really enjoyed talking to you. It makes me miss getting together so much.
I know, Demi. I know.
Maybe we can just have one final question and just maybe talk a little bit about the vision that you have going forward. This has been unprecedented times. I truly believe, though, that this has brought some amazing changes as well, because people were seeing it throughout the holiday season, especially that people are really championing the buy small, support small business, shop local. We see that all over the social media, which is amazing. I think that some positive changes have come out of this pandemic. So what kind of things, what vision are you hoping to see in the near future?
Well, I always hope that fair trade will grow. And I'm hoping that will happen through our web store and through the keeners in my volunteer groups who are good on Facebook. And Twitter, not Twitter. What's the other one?
Instagram.
Instagram. Yes, Instagram.
You're on the gram.
It is, I can't say that it's not a struggle. It is a struggle. The Fair Trade Town movement in Port Colborne has been around now for 11 years or 12 years. But every year it seems to get harder and harder to get people intentionally complying. They often, by chance, have fair trade products in their store because some of the interesting companies coming out now are fair trade. And so without even realizing it, they bring in some fair trade products. And part of our mandate is that your store or restaurant has to have 2 or more products in their store to be recognized as a partner. Well, that's not so hard to do anymore.
No, exactly. It's actually kind of neat to see that, it hasn't even been intentional, that they're just finding these amazing stores and products.
In that regard, it is growing.
Yes.
And that's positive. I just would like to see, I just like to see more people being intentional about it. Yeah. But no, since our little store has been around for 36 years in Port Colborne, my vision is that it will be around for another 36. My hope is that I really would like to be able to pay somebody full-time in our store, because I want to hire people here as well, and that we are, an important and integral part of our community downtown business group. So, yeah.
You've done so much for our community already, and I know that that vision is definitely doable. We're going to make sure that in the show notes we have all the connections to your store. So we'll have your website, we'll get your Instagram and Facebook logins there so people can connect with you. And we just really hope that you have a wonderful holiday season. And I'm so excited that we'll be able to continue to grow, bring more products. Moya's got some things in the works right now for some new products, and hopefully we'll be able to get those into your store soon in the new year. So that's all exciting.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for your support of Fair Trade. You are an amazing inspiration to me too. I have to say that. And thanks for the work you do to keep this movement alive. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jane. That means a lot coming from you. Well, again, I hope you have a wonderful holiday. To all our listeners, thank you so much. And we'll be sure to make sure you can connect with Jane and the wonderful store at Villages Port Colborne. And I hope everybody has a great day. Thanks so much.
Thank you for listening to Start Small. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and found a small step you can take today. Make sure you share it with a friend. And if you have not done so yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And if you are enjoying this podcast, consider taking a moment and leaving us an honest review in your Apple podcasting app so more people can be inspired to take small steps towards social impact.